Hello, and welcome to another segment of the Coatesville Area Public Library's Oral History Project. I'm Kirk Witmer, and with me today is Mr. Al Eastburn, who has been an integral part of Lucan's and as well as many other agencies throughout our county. Welcome, Al.
Good morning.
It's nice to have you with us and to be a part of our project.
Glad to be here.
Al, you first came to Coatesville in 1955 as an engineer for Lucan's, and that began a 37-year career with the company. Tell us your memories and impressions of Lucan's as you first arrived.
Well, I can tell you one memory that goes back before I arrived.
Please.
In 1955, I had left my previous job and had gone to an agency to relocate to some other position, some other company. And I went to several agencies, and all of them said, we have a job opening at Lucan's that you would fit. And I said, no, I've been through Coatesville. I remember the town. It had those gray painted fences, and it looked terrible. I don't think I want to go there. And it was, I guess, a month later that I finally decided to come up and have an interview and accepted a job. And 30 years later, when I became president, one of the early things that I did was to get rid of the gray painted fence of the two bridges across the highway. Hopefully the town looks a little better now.
Yes, I'm sure it does.
But those impressions stay with you long.
Yes. How about the operations of Lucan's? How were they different in 1955 from what they were during your term as president of the company?
Well, it was quite a different company at the time that I came. It was in a crisis stage. Its equipment and processes were old. It had a very poor balance sheet. It had to make a major move or essentially go out of business. And the company was very clever in arranging financing by going to three of its major suppliers and obtaining a loan for almost $30 million against future business. And with that money, the plant was modernized. At the time that I came, steel was made by the old open hearth practice. It used to take 12 hours to get a heat out. Today, we make it in the electric furnace, and it takes us an hour and a half to get a heat out. And the quality is far superior, and the cost is much less. I think the company was very courageous in that period of time. It adopted electric furnace technology when most of the industry was looking at it but hadn't made the plunge. And we were among the first to go into it. We were a pioneer in every sense. And we've approved the practice very well and were very successful as a result of that.
With those improvements that took place in Lucan's during those 30 years, did you see similar improvements in the city as well as Lucan's became more prosperous? Did that spill over into the community?
I think the city was a long-established city and had a mix of residents that is different than it is today. In earlier days, most of the Lucan's management lived in the city or very near it. In the mid-50s, when I came, a lot of that had changed philosophically throughout the country, for that matter. And increasingly, management personnel from the company began to settle in the suburbs, if you will, on 1- and 2-acre lots, one place or another. And as a result, the mix of residents in the town changed over time, and it did not improve particularly. Lucan's ultimately built a new office building down in the southern part of town. That took a lot of traffic away from the shopping area on the lunch hour, for example. And little things of that sort have an impact far greater than we realize.
Al, you've had an association with many agencies in the county besides Lucan's. I know that you've been a chairman of the board of the old Coatesville Hospital, and you've also been associated with the YMCA. Tell me about your work with those agencies.
Well, I got active with the hospital at the request of Lukens many years ago. It was in a transitional period. We had one last building campaign in front of us for an addition to the Coatesville Hospital, if you will, and I was chairman during that process. And then, of course, we were working towards moving the hospital to a location that would make it easier to access and more visible to the patient community, if you will. It was an interesting period. When I joined it, we still prepared all of the bills by hand. One of our board members, who was a long resident of the city, would sit and review them at the end of the month, and he would say, "This woman can't pay that much. Make the bill so many dollars."
Oh, wow.
A process which is long since gone.
I'm sure.
But it was interesting. Of course, after that, the paperwork systems got automated. Many changes occurred in healthcare. The hospital now is a very viable institution, serving, I think, a much wider community than it did before. The why, I was again asked if I would join. I did. The Y had been a very successful YMCA for many years. Part of its success stemmed from the fact that it owned a motion picture theater. And in that period of time, prior to the mid-50s, movie theaters were a very good, successful business. The Y brought in a lot of revenue, which it used to expand into various areas in the county.
And this movie theater, I think, would have been the auditorium?
Would be the auditorium. Was a very thriving business. Unfortunately, not a lot of money was put back into the major facility in Coatesville, which had a dormitory and a cafeteria. Over time, those facilities became run down. The cafeteria has struggled to meet county health requirements. And at one point, when we attempted to stimulate business, we received protests from some local restaurants who felt that it was a charitable institution which they supported and we should not advertise and so forth. Television arrived. The revenue from the theater disappeared. The dormitory business would not support itself. And ultimately, after steady losses month after month, the only asset left was the camp, Camp Chesapeake. And we sold the camp, leveraged that money to begin a new Y, this time again out of town with a higher visibility and a bigger base of customers, if you will. And with great reluctance, because the Y was very deeply associated with the town. The Brandywine Y continues to serve the city itself. It buses children to the Y. It is aggressively looking at installing a new facility in Coatesville as a branch to serve the town. But at the time, it made the only decision really available to it, and it was a painful one.
I'm sure. Mr. Eastburn, you have also been a founding chairman of the county council, or county chamber, I should say.
Yes.
How did that happen?
Well, the counties vary in the way they treat chambers of commerce. Lancaster County, for example, has one chamber of commerce for all of Lancaster, city and county. In Chester County, the tradition has been different. We've had them in almost each major city or location, and we have 10. But the feeling was that we needed one central chamber which could focus interests on legislative and political issues and give the county more clout in trying to get some of those processed in Harrisburg. And so two different organizations, the Business and Industry Council of the Development Council and a collection of chambers which had contributed to a central voice. Those two organizations were serving essentially the same purpose and elected to merge. And from that was born the county chamber. That chamber was formed essentially in 1992. It is now a very powerful voice, I believe, for business in the community, and has, I think, accomplished a number of very outstanding things.
Is there anything specific that you might be able to point to as an accomplishment of the Chamber of Commerce?
Well, it has lobbied on behalf of a variety of legislation, some of which has been helpful on the local scene. We have a real unity, if you will, among the legislative group that is elected in Chester County and speaks for us in Harrisburg. It has certainly been helpful, for example, in the Exton bypass. It was a driving force through a subcommittee that was formed along with the county government and others. We were able to get experimental funds, if you will, to get that process initiated from our then senator. Had we not, we might still be driving on old Route 30. But there have been a number of others as well.
With the advances in technology over the years, it seems that technology has become part and parcel of all of our daily lives, and especially with the advent of the Internet. And from that, we've had an agency that you've gotten to be a part of, ChescoNet. Tell us about your work there.
Well, ChescoNet was formed initially by Westchester University. They foresaw a need for low-cost connectivity in the nonprofit sector in the county. And ultimately, we incorporated it some 2 years ago, I guess. And we provide connectivity between about half of the schools in the county, all of the libraries, and part of the county government. We do that with very wideband connections. We have an internet service which connects anyone who wishes to the internet itself, and that is a first-level peer connection, which is important in terms of the service level and quality and bandwidth. The hope is that that organization is essentially a cooperative of people. It is a way to enable one school district to talk to another, to exchange programs in full motion video, interactive if they wish so. And it can do that at very low cost. In time, as the community grows and as the schools become more technically knowledgeable, the availability of that bandwidth will stimulate a lot of growth in that connectivity area. We always talk about having the best math teacher teaching math all around the district. Unfortunately, if you ask each district who is the best math teacher, they have it.
They all have one, yes.
But in time, that will change along with some other things.
Mm-hmm. You've also been a part of our housing authority here in the area, too.
Yes.
What changes have you seen, and what issues has the housing authority been dealing with?
Well, the housing authority, some 5 years ago, had a number of problems. It had become put on a list by HUD, which classified it as one step away from being taken over. The problems start with the fact that there was no active director of the housing authority, had been unable to hire one.
And excuse me, this would have been what time period?
This would have been, this is 98, 93. And in that period, a lot of things had been allowed to slide. There had been no new housing provided by the housing authority in well over 10 years. And there is a great demand for public housing, low-income housing in Chester County despite its wealth. There are pockets of poverty that need to be addressed. Today, the housing authority, I think, is in very good shape. It ranks in one of the highest in the country in terms of its scores as measured by HUD. It has become involved in some very innovative and creative solutions. We recently opened the Denny Tag Building, which was an old industrial building in the center of Westchester in a very lovely community. And it has been converted into some 60 rooms for senior citizens. We're finishing one in Honeybrook this month, which is the reclaim of the old school, which is right on the main street in Honeybrook. And we're involved in providing consulting services in the county, in the state, and out of the state to other organizations to help them achieve the same kind of financing and results that we have received. We've done some creative financing to accomplish this. We've used tax credits provided by the state. We have used local financing through our banks. First National, First Financial have been very supportive. But suffice it to say, we have been able to put additional housing stock into the community. We have closed Oak Street, which was a blight. And we're in the process with a $16 million grant, which we obtained from HUD, to revitalize much of the downtown area of Coatesville. And very shortly, the next 2 to 3 years, I think we'll see a very significant change in the appearance of the town. Many homes will be rehabilitated. Some new homes will be built on infill lots. The structures up on the hill will be demolished and replaced with a much nicer development.
Sounds like in the 6 or 7 years since '93, when the agency was on the brink of its demise, the authority has become a very vital part of our community.
Yes, it has. Yes.
Coatesville has seen a number of ups and downs, we'll call them, and there have been many downs, and there was for quite a number of years a very noticeable decline in the quality of the Coatesville community. But out of that, all good things come from something that's not so good. We now have the Coatesville Area Partners for Progress, of which you are a part, and we're very glad of that. Tell us, Al, a little bit about what CAP is doing.
Well, CAP was formed 3 or 4 years ago out of desperation. Coatesville was bottoming out. Nothing seemed to work. The crime rate was on the increase. Housing was terrible. In that climate, 2 or 3 business people, myself included, sat down and said, everything else seems to have failed. Can the business community, with its discipline and know-how, do something to turn this around? And CAP was formed. It is a collection of business people in Coatesville and in the surrounding areas of Coatesville. And their function can best be described as providing the know-how and the know-who. Their goal is to work through other existing organizations to be a source of information and guidance and, if necessary, a little clout. And I think, obviously, things are much better today than they were when we were formed. A lot of the credit for that goes to the City Council, which I think at the moment is very unified and on a very good track. We have been able to hire an excellent police chief. Our crime situation is being addressed in a very forceful way. We have an excellent city manager aboard, and I think many of the things that we felt very hopeless about 3 or 4 years ago, we feel very excited about now. So there's much yet to be done, but we've come a long way.
With all of that in mind, and I don't mean to put you on the spot here, but I would like to get your impressions of what you feel are in store for Coatesville's future.
Well, I think the secret to a successful community is to raise the standard of living. If the average income level of the residents is high, then most of the problems we talk about disappear. So one of our objectives has to be to provide jobs, and to provide jobs that tend to be of a higher income capability. I see that coming about in a variety of ways. We are encouraging new businesses to come into the area. And fortunately, the county has been very successful in drawing in high-tech businesses, pharmaceuticals, all manner of technology companies and so forth. these companies tend to pay higher wages, benefits. They also require higher trained people. We need to put an emphasis on education if we're to do this. The Housing Authority is making a serious effort now to get residents of the Housing Authority employed. We have more than 60 residents of the Housing Authority who are being trained either at the Laborers International to do asbestos removal, to do lead removal, to do painting, to do construction, labor, to help out in a variety of ways. We are in the process of finding and giving them jobs by hand-holding them and educating them. Delaware County Community College is about to set up shop outside of Downingtown. And some of those courses will probably be taught in Coatesville. Every effort needs to be made to do what we can to increase the knowledge of the residents of the community and to raise the standard of living. And education is the key to that.
Al, you also mentioned that CAP is making efforts to encourage new businesses to come into the area. Can you give me some more specifics on what forms that encouragement is taking?
Well, we of course have an enterprise zone in the city, and last year CAP administered the enterprise zone activity. It had lain dormant for a year or two. Hopefully the city will now pick that up and continue it going forward. But it is an attractive way to encourage businesses into the community. It's not enough, but it's certainly a step. We are working with the Development Council to cast a net to see if there are other businesses that we can pull into the community. We recently looked at a company that wanted to build pre-manufactured homes on a site in town that would have employed perhaps 100 people. Unfortunately, we have not been able to conclude that. But there are other enterprises of a similar nature that are being investigated almost every month. And for every 100 you get, you always land one or two. So the effort is to keep trying. The city manager has been helpful in looking for businesses that relate to Lucan's and its products. And we've had conversation with Lucan's about properties to help support that kind of effort. There are a wide range of things going on quietly to try and bring business into town.
Well, let's hope that we're successful.
I hope so.
Mr. Eastburn, I can't thank you enough for agreeing to be part of our project here. You've given us a new slant on some of the aspects of Coatesville's more recent history, and I'm very appreciative that you were part of our project.
Thank you very much. Very pleasure.
Thank you.